Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about, productivity or goal setting. Basically, I feel like when a lot of people follow self-help books, I think a lot of them are actually more NISE based. And I tried so hard to be a productive person, but it was extremely difficult. And recently I just realized that that's probably not the way, like it just wasn't naturally attuned to my cognitive function stack. So I wanted to share that with you guys and see what you think. I'll talk about NISE first, since I think that's the more natural way. Um, I think of the book Psycho Cybernetics, which I struggled to read. I tried to read it, but I think I only got to the second chapter. But it's basically talking about how in a rocket ship or a homing missile, you visualize or you lock yourself onto a target and then the path just happens by itself, which I do not relate to at all. But I think this is a NISE approach or SENI, whichever one's higher. Yeah, if you have a goal or a project that you want to accomplish, you just visualize the thing. I think NI is very visual. I'll have to talk about that in a different video, but I think NI is the visualization function. There's also the book The Law of Attraction, which is really, really, really pseudoscience-y, and it tries to pass off as a real science, which I don't like. But I think there's something psychological to it, like you visualize, being super successful or being super healthy, having a lot of friends, etc. And I think for these people, they'll have a higher chance of getting there. So I think how this works is because NI is general and broad and intuitive. But yeah, it's general and broad. It has control over the bird's eye view of a large stretch of time. So you can think of seeing 10 years, 20 years, your whole life even down the line, and you can see cause and effect relationships and how one thing will naturally lead to another. So it's that aspect, but also the SE aspect is very important. I think with SE, if you think about it literally, it's noticing external objects and their sensory qualities. It's not actually noticing how the sensory things impact you or your own sensory senses. Like you don't feel or you don't perceive how you sense things, you perceive things that are external. So what I'm saying is that they're less likely to feel like so tired or just inner imbalance or fatigued or just don't feel like doing something. I think with SE, they're more like, oh my gosh, this object is not done. Like, I want this object to be this way. Like, I want my apartment to be pink or whatever. And then they do it. Like, that's their primary mode of attention is outward. And they're not so much like, oh, like, working in front of the computer for 5 hours a day is really tiring on my eyes. They're more like, okay, I want this, let me get this. I think another factor that makes the sort of visualization and trust, yeah, I guess I think of it more as visualize and trust that you'll get there. And then also, yeah, SE kicks all the obstacles in the way. It really does. Like, if there's resistance, they just get rid of it. Like, they bulldoze over it. That's kind of interesting because I think TE is known as the bulldozing function in MBTI, but SE is definitely the bulldozing function in terms of socionics definitions. And my approach is that I take a little bit of both, like whichever bit I agree with, I just take that. And I definitely agree more with the socionics definition on this one. Okay, so the other aspect is that the future feels real. This is something I've noticed across all NISE users, and something that's not in ESI is that the future just feels real. It feels like almost like, why not? Why isn't the present like that? Like, it feels more, for some people it can feel more real than the present. Like, your ideal vision of the future can be like, that's clearly how things are supposed to be and like why aren't things like this. So you're naturally going to change everything that doesn't match up to that vision in the present. You're going to change everything to match it up, and that's how I think this works for NI and SE people. Okay, moving on to NESI people. So I think what worked for me was focusing on tiny time increments. So I do think SI is very time-based. However, it cannot focus on a huge stretch of time like NI can. It can only focus on a tiny amount of time. So I do think you have to do a lot more conscious planning. That's kind of interesting. I think SI itself is a more conscious function and NI is a more like a subconscious, intuitive type function. But I think SI can verbalize exactly how you came to your sensory associations and stuff. Okay, so you want to look at like small increments and you want to do some planning. So if you have a large task, yeah, this sounds really boring and uninspiring, but I think this is how it works better for us, is that you break down the task into tiny things and you try to work on those tiny things every day. I think that might work for higher SI users, but for me, I can't even predict how long the task is going to take in the first place. I think that's maybe also lower TE. But the best way I found for me is actually to focus on the day. So you plan out your schedule of the day. I know it's so stereotypical SI and schedules, but yeah, you determine kind of like where you want to, what you want in life, I guess. Like if you want to have more friends, say, and like the back to what I was saying for the NI scenario, if you want to be more successful, make more money, etc. So you have like a bunch of goals. You want to be more healthy. So you want to plan your day around these things. Each of these things will deserve a bit of attention. So you can say that I will spend half an hour every day from 9 to 9:30 working on my health. And then from like 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I'll work on reaching out to friends or going to an event to make new friends. Yeah, so and then from I guess 10 a.m. to like 4 p.m. you want to work on building your business or okay, whatever. So whatever it is, you want to devote a fixed amount of time every day. And this feels really scary to me because you don't know where you're going really. But I think if you correctly do it every day, if you manage to devote the time that you said you were, it's all gonna work out. Yeah, somehow this is so frustrating because I think for NI, it's you see the big picture, you see your end goal. Yeah, you see the end and you can just trust that it'll work out. For SI, you can't see the end. You have to just see the day by day, and then you just trust that it'll work out. So I think if SI and E people try to visualize a big picture, the overarching 50-year plan, or visualize the very end goal, they're gonna get overwhelmed. Yeah, I get constantly overwhelmed because you're going to see tasks as insurmountable. I always see the task as like, if I have a project that could potentially take years to finish, I can't imagine like freaking when I'm 35. Like that's just way too overwhelming for me. I have to be like, okay, so I want to finish this thing A, so I'm gonna do thing A. Well, you have to think about how long it deserves. So maybe you don't want to work on it for 9 hours every day, but maybe, if you have a side project, you want to work on it 2 hours every day, and that's feasible. So you just focus on that, and you just trust that it'll work out. And it was so scary, but that's how I've managed to finish a lot of big projects. But in between that, in the middle of that, I kept trying to switch over to the NISE method, and whenever I would switch over to that, I would just like freeze up, and it turns out to be my least productive days ever, where I'm just like sitting in fear, worrying about this future thing that may or may not happen. Yeah, because the future doesn't feel real to NESI people. That's another thing. For our axis, what feels real, like viscerally real, is the past, right? Like I can't even imagine why the NISE people could feel detached from their past. Like I've heard them say that it could even feel like it's happening to a separate person, or that they're watching a movie when they think about their past. It doesn't feel viscerally real or connected to them. But anyway, for me, it feels completely real. So another great thing that happens when you manage to do these daily schedule things, it doesn't have to be that strict. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I wake up, I brush my teeth, and then I work, and then I exercise. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. It could just be you saying that, okay, at some point I have to do 1 hour of X. But the more days like this you manage to get in, it's going to affect your self-image, I think, because the past feels so real. So the more you do it, the more you'll feel like, oh, okay, I'm a productive person, or I can do these things. I am able to do what I set out to do. Of course, you want to base these tiny increments of time on long-term things that you want. You'll have to think what you want in the future. And then break it down to these tiny actionable steps. But after doing that, after you break it down, you don't want to keep looking at the future. Like, just don't worry about the future. The future will come by itself. Just worry about doing today correctly. I think this is the more SINE way. Okay, so that is basically it. Let me know what you thought about this video. I'm really curious. This is, I guess, an idea that I've talked to with a bunch of other people, like people that I know their type. So then we talk about this, and it seems to fit the pattern, but of course the sample size is pretty limited. So I'm interested to see if this works for you, or if you have any unique productivity tips that weren't talked about in this video. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.